Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to episode 334 of the Jays from the Couch radio podcast, brought to you by jaysfromthecouch.com. We're so happy you're tuning in for another episode, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter. We really do appreciate it. The live interactions are particularly enjoyable, I will say. But if you aren't able to catch us on any of those channels, don't worry. You can get the audio version on Apple or Google or Spotify, anywhere you find quality podcast, you'll find the Jays from the Couch radio podcast. I'm your host, as always, Shaun Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at Doyle JFtC. Great episode for you this week as well. Our MLB Minute will look at the All-Star game and kind of the process by which that whole shindig gets selected. We'll also look at how can the Blue Jays improve. First half, kind of a disappointment. They've got the whole entire second half ahead of them, and it's going to be a bumpy ride if the first half is any indication, and we're going to take a look at how they can kind of smooth out the bumps or even potentially avoid them altogether. Before we dive into that, take a moment here to remind you that you can join the Blue Jays Talk for All Facebook group. We started this group as just a way for Blue Jays fans to get together without the judgment and the high horse commentary of particular people out there. It's just a friendly place for everybody to get together and enjoy Blue Jays talk and baseball in general. So look us up on Facebook, the Blue Jays Talk for All Facebook group, and join today. And of course, I'm going to remind you that our campaign to end ALS is continuing. We've been doing this for a few years now, and we're slowly but surely plugging away at raising money for the ALS Society of Canada so that they can continue to wipe out this disease. Slowly but surely, we're going to get there, and it's through help from people like you. So thank you in advance. You can make a charitable tax-deductible donation by heading to support.alsevents.ca/Jays from the Couch. Again, lots of people have done it in the past, and we're looking for lots more, so keep it coming. But if you're somebody who wants a little something extra for your money, don't you worry, we got you covered. You can head to our Redbubble shop where you can get Jays from the Couch merchandise, the podcast, the Sunny Side of the Dome, and the On fexcircle. All of the merchandise is there. Whatever you like, shirts, hats, whatever's, they're all there, and 100% of the profits go directly to the ALS Society of Canada. So please consider making a purchase today or just a donation. We would be forever in your debt. All right, to help me get this party started in episode 334, first of all, host of what you know as the On fexcircle, but that's getting a facelift here. We'll talk about that here this week as well. But it's Steve Feck joining me from our American correspondent. I always forget to say that, but welcome, Steve.
Welcome, Shaun. Hey, did hell freeze over?
Did hell freeze over? Not quite yet, buddy.
Well, the reason I ask is because the Blue Jays have had a really good amateur draft. The GM, I just assumed hell froze over. But that's good to know. Like, it's good to know. Maybe it's a sign of better things to come.
We'll see. Speaking of better things to come, host of Sunny Side of the Dome, Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. It's the one and only Karen Suter. Good evening, Karen.
Good evening, Shaun. Good evening, Steve.
Steve set me up perfectly for that intro. I had to go with it. So welcome to you both. So for Steve, before we get into everything, we got our MLB Minute coming up here, but just give everybody a taste of what's coming up, the kind of new look on fexcircle, if you will.
Okay, well, basically, there's so many exciting things happening, on our website as far as articles, whether it be series of articles or individual things that we come up with. I thought it was really important to really kind of change the direction of the show and kind of feature, Ryan Mueller's minor league report specific articles, whether it be a deep dive by Bob Ritchie or Karen, looking at a particular player or or looking at the sunny side of things for the Blue Jays. So we're gonna do that. We're going to try to involve more guests. There's a lot of Blue Jay fans out there that have already come on, but also others that have asked about maybe joining us. So I want to make it into a more of a magazine format. But fear not, the last 5 or 10 minutes of every show will still be views from the on fexcircle. Now, the good news / bad news about it is that means I've been holding back my rage for 30 minutes. It's all going to come spewing out, and it's going to be really ugly at times. I have a feeling, I fear. But we'll see how the new format works. If I don't have a nervous breakdown or we don't get shut down by the FCC or whatever the Canadian equivalent would be, I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, I'm sure the CRTC isn't too worried. I'm sure we'll be fine. I'm looking forward to the new format. It'll be kind of an extended show in a sense. We'll go with a 45-minute show as opposed to the previous 30 minutes, and happening bi-weekly, kind of like first week of the month, last week of the month kind of thing. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Yes. So that way, you'll only have 2 weeks to have to worry about me. Then you can forget about me for 2 weeks, and then back comes. So
no one can forget about you.
Impossible.
And just so you know, JFtC is not responsible for your therapy bills. We warn you. We've been warning you for 4 years, and you haven't paid attention. So if you're in therapy because of the on fexcircle, that's your own fault.
It's not covering my therapy, so it's not covering anybody else's. I can tell you that. Anyway, let's move into our MLB Minute segment. And again, for those of you who are new, we just simply take a 1 minute quick around the horn. We choose a topic weekly, and each of us gets 1 minute to rant, to rave, to wax poetic about said topic. And this week, we're going to look at how the All-Star Game is selected. I know that Major League Baseball is a really interesting scenario, I guess, in that they keep trying things. They, that all of a sudden that it was worth home field advantage in the World Series and things like that. But this time it matters and stuff like that. And it just never really caught on, right? But they do have the home run derby, which is probably the highlight for a lot of people. Excuse me. But the entire process where fans get to vote for the starters and whatnot. It's a big drawn out kind of soap opera-ish thing and all of that stuff. And we're here to give you 1 minute. 1 minute only of our thoughts on that entire process. So, Karen, let's lead off with you. Your 1 minute begins now.
So yeah, I like the All-Star Game. I guess as a baseball fan, I kind of take it seriously, and I really want the best players to be the ones to get to the All-Star Game. The idea of the fan vote is nice because it's interactive, makes the fans feel a part of it, but sadly, it's really more of a popularity contest than it is a true measuring stick of the best player. Case in point, Bo Bichette should have been the starting shortstop with everything that he's done all year. I'm sorry, I know Corey Seager's numbers were also very good, but he missed a month, and that means something. The smaller sample size, I believe, I'm not even sure if he would be league MVP eligible. He's not batting title eligible. He doesn't have enough at-bats, I don't think. So I really think the best players should be the ones, not the ones who get the vote, and then you've got these 2 rounds. Pick the best players.
Best players. Steven, your 1 minute begins now.
Well, I come at this from a really unique viewpoint in that I literally grew up. There was no all-star voting until I was like 9 years old. So I literally have been alive and voted in every single all-star ballot type situation. Bottom line is, whether it's a popularity contest, whether teams are stuffing the ballot box, however you want to look at it, and theoretically, you could say Blue Jay fans had a maybe unfair impact on some of the players that went into the final group there. I mean, if you're looking from outside of Blue Jays fandom, You could argue that, but ultimately it's an exhibition game. The fact that it doesn't impact home field advantage or any other stupid thing that Rob Manfred comes up with, it doesn't matter anymore. Just deal with it. Okay, it's an exhibition game. It's a distraction. It really doesn't deserve your anger and angst and therapy bills.
Therapy bills, which again, Jays from the Couch is not responsible
It's not responsible for. That's correct.
Ladies and gentlemen, Feck and I disagree. What a shock.
All right, my 1 minute begins now. So actually, I think that it's rather interesting. I think the fan voting part of it is it makes it a little less reliable, a little less of an all-star game, in my opinion. It makes it a popularity contest. However, what I will say is that the fans absolutely should still have a vote in it. So, for example, I think what needs to happen, probably you take the top 3 position players at each position you can do by wins above replacement, or you can do it by whatever's, however that gets decided. That'll be the challenge, I know. But then fans can vote on out of those 3. And the reason I say that is because you are going to, in theory, you can have somebody collect 2 million votes and their numbers, maybe they miss half the first, like Corey Seager or whatever, or they haven't even played at all. Yordan Alvarez is basically, hasn't played, and here he is like in the All-Star game. That makes no sense. Obviously, we knew from the beginning he wasn't going to go anyway. But there are a lot of things that I think the All-Star game can and should do. There's a great article at The Athletic about the All-Star game and some different ideas, skills competitions and things like that could be done. But anyway, maybe we'll save that for another day because I'm going well over a minute here. But I do think that the formatting of it should, kind of be ironed out. Go ahead, Steve.
Something just occurred to me, like literally as the two of you were doing your things. What if we kind of flipped it a bit, where the players vote, or general manager, or some combination, vote on who the starters should be, and then the fans get to vote who the reserves are?
Could do, or you could have the players vote on the top 3 for each position, and then the fans can choose the one starter. But go ahead, Karen.
The only, I think what you're trying to say there, Steve. One flaw to that plan is every team has to be represented as it should. And if you're counting on the fans to choose at least one player from all teams, I don't think that's going to happen. So
how about we just get rid of that?
But
it was stupid in 1969 when it started, and it's still stupid now in 2023.
I like having every team represented.
In fairness, when it first started, the mail-in ballots started in April, and then the carrier pigeons had to get them there on time, right? So it's a completely different time period. But anyway, I don't know what the answer is, and I don't think that it'll ever come up anytime soon, because I just don't have the faith that the people running Major League Baseball have their pulse on the fan base at all anyway. So that's kind of, maybe the fan vote is the only way they're ever going to get a temperature of the fan base that's at least in some way, shape, or form accurate. But who knows? All right, let's talk about the Toronto Blue Jays, shall we? Since that's what we're here to do. They are currently 7 games back of the American League East division lead behind the Rays and the surprising, perhaps, Baltimore Orioles, who were just 2 games back of the division, which is insane to me. But Toronto Blue Jays, 7 games back, not impossible. They're within, the realm of possible in the division. But more likely right now, they hold that 3rd wild card spot, with Baltimore, Houston, and Toronto rounding out that wild card picture. Of course, the New York Yankees are a game back, and continuing some kind of free fall, perhaps. I don't know what their deal is. But regardless, at the end of the day, let's talk first of all about disappointments. Karen, is it a disappointment that they are in the 3rd wildcard spot and 7 games out of the division lead?
Well, it might be disappointing if they were in the third wild card spot, but seeing how they're in the second wild card spot, they're a little
Did I
less
say third?
disappointing. You did.
I'm done. I'm just going to walk out.
But pardon me for nitpicking.
No, thank you. Thank you. Better you than somebody else.
I mean, overall, I did expect them to be that much further ahead. I think a lot of Blue Jays fans did. I mean, I know a lot of people who I talked to in the off season had expectations that, well, with the moves that with the players that they've kept, the free agents they've signed, the trades that they've made, and so forth, addition, subtraction, and all of that, they expected the pitching and the defense to be better, and they thought the offense would be almost as good. Well, overall, the pitching and defense has been better, but the offense has taken a step backwards. So, and I just think this team, I watch them, and this team, when they play their best baseball, is capable of winning a championship. They can beat anybody. I mean, you've seen how hot Atlanta is. They swept Atlanta. They were the first team to hand the Rays a series loss. The good things, I can, and Siri thinks I'm talking to her. No, I'm not. Go away. I could go on with the positives all show, but then it's like a roller coaster when they're not good. It's like these guys can't beat a little league team. You don't know what's going on with them. So what I really hope going forward is that they find some consistency. They put it all together, and we really see a lot more of the good version of the Blue Jays than the other version.
Right. Steve, in many ways, being in a wild card spot is they're kind of lucky, right? I mean, like they almost kind of, I don't know how to, like, they failed upwards in a sense. I don't know if that makes any sense, but they're lucky to be in a playoff spot at this point.
Hey Siri, why are people surprised the Blue Jays are struggling to hang into a wild card spot? I mean, honestly, I think this team, not the individual parts, but as a unit, are what we've experienced so far here in the first half. I mean, I know you were going to put up the divisional standings as a graphic potentially, but what about the divisional record? I'm sorry, even with fewer divisional games, you cannot go 7-20 or 7-21, whatever the record is within the division, and expect yourselves to be closer to the top of the division. That's just sheer mathematics. Okay, so for me, I think they are lucky to be in a wild card spot right now, based on how this team is performing as a unit. Not that there aren't great players or that there haven't been great moments, but as a unit, sometimes really talented teams don't translate it in the standings or into playoffs. It's one of those odd quirks of being a sports fan that you can never really explain it. But I don't think anyone can really explain what's up with the Blue Jays. It really just makes no sense to me.
Yeah. And I think that it's super frustrating. Obviously, you talk about the interdivisional record and, losing all of the games against the Red Sox is really, really depressing. Really depressing. And he gives my Red Sox buddy the ammunition he needs to give me.
That's the problem, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the real problem. I was sitting next to him yesterday, and it's just nonstop, like, hey. And I'm like, God.
Well,
anyway.
Point him to the standings.
Well, and I do, right? And that's the funny thing is that, like, even that's not a great argument because the Blue Jays aren't even doing that great as they should be in the standings. So when we look at what is going on, right? Because that's the biggest question I get all the time is what is going on with these Blue Jays? And my answer is never one that people really kind of like latch onto and really sink their teeth into, because I think there's no obvious answer. But I think it speaks to, we're going to kind of look at how can this team be better. We're going to look at internally, what can they do? And then we're going to look at externally. So, Karen, I'll start with you on the external parts, but for the internal, I'm going to start with Steve. And Steve, looking at this Blue Jays team, obviously we have high expectations, and I still believe those expectations should still be there. Even though I know you make a valid point, a very good point, that's saying, like, the results are what we've seen. They can be expected. We can expect this, that, and the other thing. But as it is right now, this is what the Blue Jays are. So, Steve, when you look at what can this team do internally without going outside the organization, what did you come up with?
I think the Blue Jays need to try things that haven't been tried before. Now my lead example is going to be when Hyun-Jin Ryu is activated, and by all indications, he'll be activated probably before the trade deadline, I would guess, but maybe just after. He's still down when he threw it Dunedin, so I'm guessing he's going to do the one step at a time kind of progression. But when Ryu comes back, put him in the bullpen, have him be a multi-inning reliever. Maybe because he and Alek Manoah are such good buddies, maybe that's your tandem in one of the spots. You only let Manoah go X number of innings till he can prove he's back and he can be trusted to go more. And you kind of piggyback or do that, because it's nice because you got Manoah throwing hard, and then you got Ryu with his 700 million pitches that he has from different arm angles and everything. It's going to mess up an opponent's lineup. You're never really going to get settled into a groove in a game like that. Maybe it's a matter of playing guys, I don't want to say out of position, but literally say, what, no matter what, we're only going to DH Vladdy for a particular series for whatever reason, and we're going to let Kevin Biggio play first, and we're going to keep Whit Merrifield at second. Just whatever it is, just try different things. I don't want to say throw crap at the wall and see if it sticks, but in essence, at this point, because all the logical moves have been tried and lineups, and I think just try something different. I know a lot of teams that have struggled. They've had a thing where they just threw names in a hat and they pulled them out, and that was the batting order just for that game, just to make it a fun experience to play baseball again. And I don't know whether this team is really having that much fun, because I think they know in the back of their head, we should be better than this, and we're not. But rather than take it upon an individual shoulders, let's just put the team at ease somehow and see if that works. Just the unconventional would be what I would say they need to do internally.
Okay. So, Karen, before I have an idea as when Steve brought this up of something that I would love for them to try. I've been waiting for them to try it. But, Karen, I want to get your thoughts first on the kind of just and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Steve, but kind of like throw the spreadsheet out the window just for a little bit and actually like try something that may or may not necessarily be analytically driven or whatever have you. So, Karen,
perhaps, I'm sorry, I was going to say perhaps file that spreadsheet somewhere special.
In the recycle bin.
Well, you can call it a recycling bin because things do recycle naturally.
Right.
But
so, Karen, what do you think about the idea of trying, something new?
Right. Yeah, to a point, I always tend to be more of the opinion that rebuilding teams with nothing to lose, they can try whatever they want, because if they stumble across something that works, great. And if not, well, at least the experiment didn't really cost them a playoff spot. Do I mind the Jays trying something different? Within reason, yeah, as long as it's not really likely to backfire and work against them, because again, this is a win now team, and I don't think you can go too far off the board. I mean, you can, but it could really backfire on you big time. So
Right. And I don't disagree with that. One of the changes that I think that I would like to see kind of has to do with what Steve's talking about, and it's for some reason it's been something that they've been reluctant to try, particularly on a regular basis. But this idea of George Springer has to lead off. I think that's the one thing that I think we cling to, that just because he's George Springer, he gets to lead off. And you know what? He's got a great track record of it. I'm not knocking him for it. But when you have somebody like George Springer, who I probably more than anybody in this lineup can change the outcome of a game at the snap of a finger. Nobody more than George Springer can do that I've seen. So for me, he should be protecting Vladdy. He should be hitting behind Vladdy, as opposed to being the first batter that we see. Now, the argument, of course, is that if he's your quote-unquote one of your best hitters, then he should get more at-bats, keep him at the top, whatever. So that's one change I would like to see on a regular basis. Steve, is that the kind of thing that you're kind of getting at with specific changes?
Exactly. I mean, it could just try something. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, Mattingly did that quite often, both with the Dodgers, but more recently with the Marlins. He did it a lot, where he just would put together a lineup and you're like, well, what are you doing? But then something good came out of that change. Suddenly, I think it was Miguel Rojas led off for a couple of weeks because he just got hot. He was hitting eighth, and now suddenly he was leading off. And it really helped, the Marlins in 2020 earn that playoff bid. It was just something that he wanted to try because the team was pressing and struggling so early. It was just one of those things that good things came out of it. So I agree, Springer maybe should not be the leadoff hitter. I think that's a different topic for a different show at some point. But anything that potentially gets them out of their comfort zone and gets them out of their head and allows them to just play baseball.
Interesting. All right. So, Karen, I'll go with my internal idea first, because I think yours is more specific. But mine has to do, this is the answer that I give to everybody, is that this Blue Jays team is young, whether we realize that or not. There have been a lot of veteran additions. So obviously, Brandon Belt, that's a veteran. He brings up the average age quite a bit. Kiermaier and so on and so on. Like I'm not saying that chronologically as a group they are the youngest team in baseball, but they are a young team in a sense that they don't know how to win yet. And this is what I have been really struggling with, is that it feels like this team is a team that just believes that their talent should take them as far as they want it to take them. And that's a World Series championship. And the problem with that is that baseball doesn't work that way. Most things in life don't work that way. You can't coast riding your talent. And I think so to me, it points to the people, the adults, right? The ones who have the experience, and that is the coaching staff. And for me, this coaching staff has been a disappointment. We're getting, we've heard about accountability, and John Schneider will come out and say, yep, I messed up and whatever. Or, Luis Rivera messing up, not sending up stop signs when he's supposed to, or soon enough, or whatever's. Little things like that should not be happening. And this is where like the kind of what is the answer thing really escapes me. I don't know how to fix that. I don't know what the answer is to like having the coaches stop making mistakes, to the point, like little mistakes that should not be happening on a professional championship team. Right. You got to take care of the little things, like in basketball, like take care of the basketball. That's your first priority. Right. Like there are jobs that you have to do, and there are things that should not be happening. And this coaching staff is disappointing, for the number of mistakes they're making, but for the fact that they cannot seem to get the culture of that clubhouse focused on how exactly to win, how to go about doing things the right way all the time so that you don't make stupid mistakes, whether you're a coach or a player. And I think that's on the coaching staff in general. And this more than anything, Ross Atkins can make a trade, and it works, it doesn't work. Okay, well, okay, you can't really knock him for the results. But when you have a culture in your clubhouse that's not working, that has to stop with him, because he put these guys in there saying these are the guys who are going to create the culture that we want. It's not a winning culture, and that's what's really getting to me. So internally, something needs to fix that. I don't know if it's I'm not saying anybody needs to lose their jobs at this point, but they need just as much accountability, and what that looks like, I would love to see, because, oh my God, this club is in big trouble if they think they can just ride their talent to a World Series championship. So I guess, Karen, without getting into your specific internal adjustments, just kind of a general coaching response, I guess, because I don't want to guide you in how you respond to that, right? But am I off? Like, is this just a thing that can be fixed? Even, I guess, that's where we should start.
Well, I don't want to sit here and say that can't be fixed, because if it can't be fixed, then might as well pack it in on the season, and I'm not doing that. Yeah, I mean, there are times when things seem a little bit questionable. I mean, one of the things we heard in the off season was that this is going to be a better base running team. They're going to be more aggressive, and they've been more aggressive, but they get themselves thrown out too much of the time, like in stupid situations. So yeah, I mean, I can see some of what you're talking about. Like it would really benefit them as a team to make some smarter decisions in certain situations. So
right,
let's hope they can pick it up.
Yeah, Steve, your thoughts?
I think the one drawback of having John Schneider managing many of these kids up through the ranks is that he has won with that team playing that way. And John Schneider's a smart baseball guy. He understands that the New Hampshire Fisher Cats are not the Tampa Bay Rays or whatever team that you want to put into the equation. But when you're with a group of players, as a coach, as a manager, as a front office guy, you really do, that line gets blurred between, can we really win the way we have won utilizing these players this way or not? So for me, that's the way that I look at it. And that doesn't mean you get rid of John Schneider, because I really think he's a good manager. But, I wonder, both in the players' heads and the coaching staff's heads and the front office, well, wait a minute, these guys have won at every level. It's going to eventually work itself out, and whatever excuse you want to insert there. But that, to me, I wonder, is that a good thing that they all came up together and didn't really have much many bad times to have to kind of teach them a quick, on the field lesson. Everything was relatively easy coming up through the ranks for a lot of the guys. So I wonder, does that backfire to a degree?
Right. And Dulcimeris, watching at home on YouTube, has a great point here that MLB interviewed Whit Merrifield today, and he mentioned that they've had some issues with the new roster not quite gelling. So perhaps there are some chemistry issues. Lourdes and Teo, both leaving, did break up the core, and they were replaced by quote unquote outsiders, right? And that's a real issue. When you're trying to construct a championship team. Dulcimeris continues with, I doubt chemistry is the top reason for this season's issues, though. The way Whit talked, it might just be a small factor, but a factor nonetheless. And I would agree. Obviously, Whit Merrifield's not going to go on, national television and just say that nobody likes each other and whatever. But the fact that he's saying it means it is an issue, right? And so that's something that we don't often think of. It's not just MLB The Show where you can pull off a trade, 7 different trades, and create this uber lineup, and that it all just works, right? Because chemistry is absolutely one of those things. But that is on management. That's on the adults in the room. The adults in the room are coaches, managers, and so on. It's their job to fix that, and they better start fixing it soon, because if that's, oh boy. Anyway. All right, Karen, your internal fix.
And for this one, I'm not pulling any punches. So, as I was saying earlier, you look at this Blue Jays team, and I think the pitching overall, with a few notable exceptions, has been pretty darn good. The defense overall is certainly improved for the most part. Most of the time, you get pretty good defense from these guys. Where they have fallen short, and lately it seems like that they got no hit on Saturday. It almost feels like they get no hits almost every day. I don't know how often I find myself on Twitter saying, Blue Jays, get some hits, score some runs, do something already. I almost want to retweet yesterday's tweet and the day before's and the day before that there are a lot of talented hitters on this team. And a number of them, honestly, with the exception of Bo Bichette, they've all underperformed at some point or another during the season. I really think it's time to relieve Guillermo Martinez of his duties and get somebody else in that position. You look up Guillermo Martinez. I did a little bit of research on him and his background. He never played in Major League Baseball. He was a minor league baseball player for a period of time. He was never particularly good at hitting, and I think the highest he ever made it was Double-A. He had 1 or 2 seasons that were okay, but he really never came close from the looks of his stats at ever making the call up to Major League Baseball. He isn't somebody who has hit in Major League Baseball and has hit successfully and can pass that wisdom on to Blue Jays players. I mean, he's been the hitting coach. He took over from Brooke Jacoby in November of 2018. 2019 is a little bit of a blur. They were expected to be bad then anyway. There were some ups and downs, but starting from 2020, it seems like almost every year hitters have underperformed, and the Blue Jays have had to augment whatever he brings to the table by calling in Dante Bichette, or now they've got Victor Martinez, and Edwin Encarnacion pops up here and there, and the media makes a big deal of it because he's Edwin Encarnacion, but apparently Jesse Barfield said that a few big Blue Jays hitters, Guerrero and Gurriel and Hernandez, they were all struggling at some point, and they reached out to him. He was able to give them advice, and voila, they start hitting a lot better. I don't believe Jesse Barfield is someone who would make something like that up. And it's just that there's been too many instances of Guillermo not being the guy who can get the best out of his hitters, that they need to go and get somebody who has done the job in Major League Baseball. Well, you know what? It's time for the full-time hitting coach to be someone who has hit in Major League Baseball, who can spot things that are going on and offer quicker fixes. And whether that man is Victor Martinez would almost seem like the logical choice, because I think he's around full time. So, but whoever it is, I mean, you can go out. People have talked about wanting to trade for a hitter. Maybe they will trade for a hitter, and if they do, maybe that'll help. But you know what? That's one hitter. You replace Guillermo Martinez, and I would bet serious money that several hitters get better and fast.
Interesting. And one thing that I keep like listening to you talk, I think it's about the strategy that they bring to the plate. I think that not necessarily the mechanics of swinging the bat, but the approach, the mental approach that you take at the plate, and things like with runners in scoring position. I know that's been a thing for the Blue Jays in the first half. That to me, it sounds like a coaching job. Like the approach, you change your approach or you don't change your approach, or you do this, you don't do that, that kind of thing. That's a coaching thing, Steve. So when Karen talks about, maybe it's time, and I've never, ever heard Karen say that somebody needs to be fired. And Karen and we've been doing this for a long time, and I've never heard her say that, Steve. So it's serious business, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't disagree with it. In our little private chat we have for Jays from the Couch, we were kicking this around, and I brought up the fact that, in essence, he was fine in 2018, 2019, maybe even 2020, because then he was teaching a philosophy, and it's an organizational philosophy. It's not just Guillermo Martinez's philosophy. It's an organizational philosophy. So just like Charlie Montoyo, it worked then because we were implementing what the front office was dictating and coming on straight down. Once the team, though, started to mature and become more veteran than young core or young rookie players, now these hitters have all now faced in-game various situations. You need, as Karen said, an experienced, not a theoretical batting coach, but an experienced batting coach that can then say, look, okay, I see what you're saying, or I see the problem you're having with runners in scoring position. I have done this, or have you thought of doing this? I remember, player X or player Y did this. So it's interesting. Again, you mentioned Dante Bichette and Victor Martinez and Jesse Barfield and Ben Encarnacion. These are all guys that have been up at the plate at key times, hitting it with runners in scoring position. So if nothing else, they would lend that to the mix. I don't know that you can necessarily hold the fact that Martinez didn't play in the majors. Mario Mendoza played in the majors. He has a bad batting stat name for him, but he was one of the most effective hitting coaches, in the American League for years. Charlie Lau, everybody was fighting to get Charlie Lau as a hitting coach. I think his major league average was like 149. Yet he was the most respected hitting coach in the world. It's a matter of being able to adjust to your roster and not just sit and say, this is how you have to do it. You literally have to have an individualized plan. So again, I do believe he has to go, but there also has to be, and I think we're starting to see that, a de-emphasization of a central philosophy when it comes to hitting, pitching, whatever it would be.
Mm-hmm. So Dulcimeris continues. Jay's hitting strategist Dave Hudgens is also on my list to be replaced. He would be in charge of situational hitting and running and scoring position issues. Again, thank you for that clarification. That you're absolutely right. Today, the Yankees hired Sean Casey as their hitting coach, which is great. Good for them. Chili Davis was the Mets hitting coach and might be available. Devon White in Buffalo had been a hitting coach. Larry Walker had been hitting coach for Team Canada for over a decade. Good names. If Larry Walker became the Toronto Blue Jays hitting coach, I think I might need a new pair of pants. I would it would be very exciting for me. And the team needs an experienced coach who can use their eyes rather than one who has their nose stuck in an iPad. Dulcimeris hit after hit after hit. Go ahead, Karen.
Unlike
he should be the hitting coach.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, another. I was focusing on Gmart there, but another change. While we're at it, Luis Rivera, how many bad sands? And Devon White, I believe, isn't he first base coach for the Buffalo Bisons? So that would be a very easy switch out. See you later, Rivera, and bring up Devo, and he and Bud can share first base and third base, and
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So look for some coaching changes this winter, I'm guessing. But we're running out of time here, and we haven't even gotten to our external candidates or our external solutions, answers to fixing this Toronto Blue Jays team. And so if they can't do all of these things or won't do all of these things until the offseason, then we're looking at some external changes to try and help cover holes or band-aids or whatever you want to call them. So very quickly, we'll go around and we'll talk about our external candidates. Karen, let's start with you.
Right. Okay. So I keep hearing that the starting rotation with Manoah back, he's doing well. Ryu is doing pretty well in rehab starts. Knock on wood, they might have enough arms internally to handle the rotation. I'm looking myself at the bullpen. Now, a lot of people keep talking about, oh, the Jays bullpen is actually pretty good. They're fifth in Major League Baseball in relief pitcher ERA, and I love that. Myself, I look at it, there are 5 guys down there that I trust who have been good in almost every situation. That's Jordan Romano, Tim Meza, Trevor Richards, Nate Pearson, and Eric Swanson. I don't think 5 is enough. I'm wanting more. I want to go into the playoffs with a bullpen that is very, very, very tough for other teams to beat. And I mean, you look at internal candidates. Chad Green hasn't even started a rehab assignment yet, so don't know what's going on with him. Zach Pup was reinstated and then optioned, so doesn't look like he's coming back all that soon. Zulueta, I'm hearing they might give him a look, but he's kind of been inconsistent down at AAA. I think going outside and trading for a good relief pitcher to complement those guys would really go a long way. Earlier in the season, I was looking at the Chicago White Sox and Liam Hendricks, and I'd still love to have him back. Unfortunately, he's been on the shelf since early June with some elbow issues, and who knows what's going on. He might or might not be back this season. So I'm going to pivot to another pitcher on the White Sox staff and also a former Blue Jay. I'd like to trade for Kendall Graveman. So Kendall Graveman is having a good season. His ERA is under 3 at 2.93. He's a right-handed pitcher, 32 years old. He's actually, I believe, under team control for 1 more year after this season, and then he's free agent eligible. I mean, they said there's lots of contending teams out there. Everybody needs pitching. One reason, maybe possibly, why Graveman might not be that popular a target with other teams is people are obsessed with pitchers with high strikeout numbers. Graveman's strikeout numbers are okay. They're nothing to turn cartwheels over. They're 8 point something per 9 innings. I didn't write down the stats. But the Blue Jays already have strikeout guys. Those 5 guys that I named all have more than 9 strikeouts per 9 innings. So you need a K, and you've got guys who can give you a K. I need somebody else who can come in when all of those guys are unavailable and just get outs. Just minimize opposition scoring. It doesn't have to be via strikeouts. I want to keep the other team off the board. And I'd really like to see the Jays trade for Kendall Graveman. The White Sox are 38-54. They're 8 games back in the division. And maybe now is time for them to start selling. I mean, they would have to pass 3 teams just to win the division. They're not going to be a wild card team. So I think the Jays should go for it. I think they should bring back Graveman and go.
I just looked him up. Next season set to make $8 million, and then a free agent in 2025. Does that deter you at all?
Me, no.
No.
$8 million. I mean, in MLB terms, it's a little bit of money. It's not terrible, and they've got a ton of money coming off the books this offseason. So,
right,
you can pick up $8 million.
All right, Steve. Let's go with your external solution.
Okay, I'm going to just throw out some stats first, and then I'll name the player. But I want to see whether you and Karen would want this in the lineup to face right-hand pitching. 5 homers, 18 RBIs in 67 plate appearances. Batting average 346, on base 421, slugging 568, and OPS a cool 1,000. You think?
Sorry, that's against righties or lefties?
I'm my bad. Against lefties, my bad. Correct. He's a right-handed hitter, but this is against left-handed pitching. Thank you for correcting me there. I didn't take my Prevacid, so my focus isn't the same right now.
So considering I wrote the other day that the Blue Jays are not all that successful against left-handed pitching, particularly from the left side of the plate, I would absolutely take that in their lineup.
Okay, yeah. The player's name is Nick Senzel. He is on probably the most exciting, hottest team in Major League Baseball, the Cincinnati Reds. He is a former 2nd overall pick in the Major League draft. The Phillies almost had a parade when the Rays skipped over him, and then they were able to pick him that way. He's had some injuries. He's always been on fire against left-hand pitching, and he struggled as an everyday player facing both lefties and righties. Nick Senzel doesn't really have a job anymore. There is so much talent in that Reds organization. I mean, is he going to send Ellie De La Cruz to the bench? No. Is he going to send Matt McClain to the bench? No. Spencer Steer? No. Okay. There are guys in the Cincinnati organization that haven't even come up yet that are better than some of the guys actually on the Reds roster, including Nick Senzel. So the Reds need pitching. And I know it's a stretch to say, wait a minute, Blue Jays can't trade pitching. Well, they can trade lower level kind of major league pitching right now because the Reds are in such desperate need. Their 2 best starters are out till at least mid-August. They probably might be out for the year, the way it's going. And if they're going to win the NL Central, which they're leading now, that's the kind of deal that a proactive general manager, let's say Nick Krall, would actually do, as opposed to an inert general manager, let's say Ross Atkins, wouldn't do. So I think if they went out and got Nick Senzel, that solves one part of the hitting equation. And I think it allows other hitters to slide into reduced roles, but roles where they're going to put them in a better state for success. I think Nick Senzel, he's a guy, he still has 1 year arbitration left. He's relatively affordable. If you're a first-round talent, for the most part, you're going to have a job in Major League Baseball for a while. I think he would be a terrific bench player going forward. So that is my pick for the trade target for the Blue Jays.
Interesting. Went with a bat. I went with an arm as well. I went pitching, and I struggled, right? Because I'm not as confident in many about the starting rotation. Just simply the names that are currently on the Blue Jays roster page, whether hurt or not, don't inspire a whole lot of confidence to get through the full season, right? Because let's be real, you need a lot of pitching to do that. Anyway, so I didn't go. I struggled because I didn't go with a starter. I actually went with a bullpen and piece because I think that the bullpen has to pick up the slack for the starting rotation, and that's going to catch up with them. We've, and Karen has been saying it ever since the beginning of last year. When the bullpen gets overworked, bad things happen. Whether people want to believe that or not, it's the truth. So I went with a bullpen piece, and I went with a bullpen piece that I actually wanted the Blue Jays to get last offseason, but they didn't. And that is the lefty Andrew Chafin, who went to the Diamondbacks. Currently, he's got almost he's at 0.7 F/WAR, 3.16 ERA. He's approaching 13 strikeouts per 9. The walks per 9 are a little high this year, but the home runs are down. He's 2-2 record, 8 saves. Not the primary closer in Arizona, but he's somebody who I've had an eye on for a while, and I don't understand why the Blue Jays just let him go, because he ended up signing in Arizona for, look, I'm pulled it up here, 6.25 with his, sorry, that was their luxury tax hit. So 5.5. He's got a club option for next season at 7.25. So you wouldn't be just having him for this season; you would have him for next season. It's the kind of deal that I think a deal Ross Atkins could get on board with if he decided that that's what he wanted to do. But I would love to see Andrew Chafin in the Blue Jays uniform, another lefty out of the bullpen, one who has late high leverage kind of experience to boot. That's the kind of arm I'm looking for. Go ahead, Karen.
Not to rain on your parade. I mean, this guy sounds really good. Do you have reason to believe that a first place team would trade someone like him away?
Right. So that's my caveat, right? Is that the Diamondbacks have surprised everybody, maybe even themselves, at competing for so long this year. If they believe that's for real, they're not going to want to get rid of him, and that's the tough part. And so if there's another Andrew Chafin out there, sure. But the other thing too is that, you never know what the Diamondbacks are actually looking for, because maybe they're just riding like the Blue Jays, who were technically a playoff team in 2020, but weren't actually, a playoff team. Maybe the Diamondbacks are going to ride this wave, but still look to augment moving forward, right? But you're right, Karen, absolutely 100%. I was going to say that's the caveat, right? Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was going to say, you got to remember that Hazen worked for Shapiro, and I really believe that the whole trade with Moreno and Lourdes for Dalton Varsho, that was a Mike Hazen, Mark Shapiro deal. I don't really think that it was Atkins per se. I really think Shapiro had a lot to do with that. And Arizona needs a bat more than it needs a 30. What's Chapin? 32? 33?
Currently, he's 33.
Okay, so I mean, you don't. It's sad I know that, and I don't know my phone number, but I think that the Diamondbacks can sacrifice an Andrew Chapin, because they can then pick up something in another trade to replace him if they can get some kind of reliable bat. It might even be a AAA hitter that could potentially be coming up. So I don't think it's that far-fetched, especially because Shapiro and Hazen are really close. So I could see a deal like that being able to get consummated, because I think the Diamondbacks have enough young pieces in their system that they could then make a second trade for another bullpen piece or two to replace Chapin.
Right. And I wish that I had thought of this sooner, because Dulcimerist has probably the type of arm that I really was looking for. 2023 All-Star Michael Lorenzen is his top choice. Reliever, outfielder, two-way player for the Reds, and only very recently became a starter. He would fill the Stripling role better than Mitch White. Lorenzen is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, so would be relatively inexpensive. I love that, and especially for that pitching depth. Dulcimerist also adds, loved watching Senzel play for the Billings Mustangs in 2016 after the Reds drafted him. He's a fan. And a New Brunswick, Canada guy. I think they should bring back Teoscar Hernandez to play left field and DH against lefties. Varsho and Kevin Kiermaier can share center field. That would be fascinating.
Just they would. They won't, but
yeah, I mean, that would just be fascinating. There's nothing else I need to say about that. That would be amazing. All right, we are at the end here. Whatever happens, there are very clearly the fact that we were able to talk about internal changes that need to happen, and none of them were actually player specific. That I find that is very interesting, and the fact that there are interesting external candidates out there as well. It will be a fascinating few months coming up here, to end the season, but more importantly, a few weeks here heading into the trade deadline. Lots to talk about, and we'll always keep you up to date here on jaysfromthecouch.com in written form, or here on the live podcast Mondays, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And don't forget, the brand new revamped Steve's Show is looking to kick it into high gear. A whole bunch of content every week, every episode for you there. Starting tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern time, right here on all of these channels. And Karen's got Sunny Side of the Dome this week on Wednesday. Because I'm an idiot and screwed up my personal schedule. So Karen has kindly adjusted her own life to match that, which I deeply appreciate. So Sunny Side of the Dome this week, Wednesday. Don't miss it. 6 p.m. Eastern time, of course. So for everybody here at Jays from the Couch, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, watching religiously and faithfully. I do appreciate it. And for all the comments, the participation on the YouTube channel is great. Thank you, Dulcimeris and New Brunswick Guy, for chiming in this week. We really do appreciate it. I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart, reminding you to help us fight ALS. Head to jaysfromthecouch.com, and you can find all the ways you can do that. So for Karen, for Steve, Guillermo Martinez, just because we may not be saying his name much longer, this is Shaun Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at Doyle JFtC. Hope in life gives you a juicy fastball down the middle, and you don't miss it. Take care.